Hello and welcome to PepperGeek. My name is Calvin and today we're making sweet and spicy beef jerky. We drew inspiration from Korean style food. We have gochujang paste here and we have sesame oil. You know, we love experimenting in the kitchen. Only about 1 in 10 experiments comes out great, but this is definitely one of them. We have this new dehydrator that we've been drying out all sorts of fruits and vegetables with, but we just recently discovered that we can make beef jerky and it's awesome. Feel free to follow along with me here, but if you'd like a printable version of the recipe, head over to peppergeek.com and search for beef jerky and you'll find all the information that you find in this video and then some. So if you're new to making beef jerky, there are 3 things that are gonna be the enemy of having your beef jerky last a long time. Number 1 is moisture. So that's where the dehydrator comes in. You don't need a dehydrator. If you have an oven, you can probably use that, but there are some benefits to using an actual purpose-built dehydrator. And the first is that this thing maxes out at 165 degrees Fahrenheit, about 74 degrees Celsius. And that's about what we're gonna use for making the beef jerky, but it goes all the way down to 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Some ovens just don't go that low, and we really want to avoid going too high with the temperature here. The other is that this circulates the air inside of the dehydrator, speeding up the process. A lot of ovens don't have air circulation, some do, but ultimately you're gonna end up spending more time dehydrating if you're using an oven, but it's possible. For the purposes of this video, we're gonna assume that you do have a dehydrator, but just remember that you don't really need one. But dehydrating is an essential part of making beef jerky. You're taking out the moisture from the beef, basically getting rid of all of that water that can cause the beef to spoil. The second enemy for your beef jerky is going to be oxygen. So you want to make sure that you store the beef jerky properly after you have finished dehydrating it. And that means using something like a ball jar or freezer bags. You don't want to go using like a normal baggie, like a sandwich baggie. And if you can get them, get the little desiccant packets. We'll show you what those look like in a little bit. But those basically remove oxygen from the package. And the third enemy, and we're gonna get to that right now, is fat. So we're using a flank steak here. This is one of the preferred cuts. You can also use eye of round, top round, or bottom round, and those are typically a little bit cheaper than a flank steak, but fat goes bad a lot faster than the meaty portions of the beef. So you're gonna wanna cut away any excess fat before you dehydrate, and we'll also do some blotting to get rid of the fat during the dehydration process. So with all that out of the way, I'm gonna put this back into the freezer for about an hour so that it firms up and it'll be a lot easier for us to cut even slices when we're ready to marinate. Okay, so this is sweet and spicy beef jerky. Gochujang paste and sesame oil bring out Korean style flavors and it's just so good. It's better than anything I've ever had from the store. It's my opinion, it's my recipe, but trust me, it's so good. So we start with soy sauce. This is enough for about 1 pound of beef, but feel free to double it or triple it if you're gonna do a bunch, but we're doing 2 tablespoons of soy sauce to start. 1 teaspoon of sesame oil. 2 tablespoons of dark brown sugar packed. A half teaspoon each of garlic powder and onion powder. If you want to use fresh garlic, feel free. We used 2 cloves last time for this recipe, but we're using a half a teaspoon of garlic powder instead. And for some more heat, we're adding a half a teaspoon of cayenne pepper powder. A little heaping on that one, that's fine. And for the final ingredient, we're using 1 teaspoon of gochujang hot pepper paste. This is a fermented Korean paste. It's sweet, it's savory, it's umami, it's just all sorts of goodness. You can find this at Korean marketplaces. I think you can also get it online. So it looks like that, it's pretty thick. And that's our final ingredient. Let's get it in there. Now we're just gonna whisk this together, get it nice and incorporated. You wanna make sure all of those ingredients obviously mix together well. So we're gonna set that aside and grab our beef. Okay, so we've allowed this to sit in the freezer for about an hour, hour and a half, depending on the thickness of your cut. And now it's really firmed up. If you can see, you can sort of see some crystals forming on it. You don't want to freeze it all the way through. You just want to get it to a point where it's a little more firm and easier to cut. So, when it comes to beef jerky, you can cut against the grain or with the grain. We prefer to cut against the grain, which is this direction. With the grain would be basically in the same direction as the lines that you see on the beef. When you cut against the grain like this though, you end up with a more tender beef jerky, and that's just what we prefer. If you want to have to chew on it, you can cut with the grain. So we're looking for about a 1/4 inch, something like that. So you're gonna want to use a very sharp knife, and you kind of have to work quickly because your hands will end up warming up the beef and it'll become more and more difficult to work with. You know, we're gonna end up with really tender beef jerky that just sort of falls apart and is easier to chew. Sometimes we'll do a mix. I mean, you could cut half of it against the grain, half of it with the grain if you want a little variety. You know what? Yeah, let's do the rest of it with the grain just so we can have an example. There we go, that's more like it. And as this dehydrates, it will shrivel up a little bit. They won't be quite as thick. These cuts are actually a little bit too long for my liking, so I'm gonna cut them in half. I think that's a much more manageable shape. Okay, so we've prepared our meat here. It is ready for the marinade. And for that, we're just gonna use a simple sandwich baggie. I wouldn't store the finished product in a bag like this because oxygen can get through. But for marinade, it works just fine. So we're gonna add about half the beef to the bag. And then I'm gonna try to pour about half of the marinade in over that. And the reason I divvy it up is because it can be a little bit hard in a bag like this to cover all of the meat. So I'll do a little massage there, try to work it across all the beef, and then we'll go and put the rest in. Now the rest of the marinade. Okay, I'm gonna seal up the bag, try to squeeze out most of the air, and then we're just gonna massage. Okay, and you wanna just make sure that every bit of every piece of meat has some of the marinade on it. You can put this in the fridge and marinate overnight, but we're a little impatient. We want our beef jerky today. So we're gonna have it today. And when I come back in about an hour, this should have had time to settle work itself into the meat, and it'll be ready to head into the dehydrator. So I'll see you soon. All right, so 1 hour has passed. This is done marinating now, and we're gonna take it out and lay it out on our dehydrator trays. So this is an Excalibur dehydrator. I don't think they make this exact model anymore for whatever reason. This one has 4 trays, but they make larger ones with I think 9 trays. I'll leave a link in the description below to Amazon so you can see whatever models they do have, but it's been great. It's relatively quiet and it doesn't take up too much space and does a great job dehydrating. So here's the trays. You have this little plastic film that is like a mesh. It allows the air to circulate above and below whatever it is you're dehydrating, and they're pretty easy to clean after you're done. So we're gonna lay out the beef strips, making sure that none of them are touching one another, like so. And I put a paper towel beneath the tray just to sop up any of the excess liquid. As you can see, nice and even. And now we can put the trays in here and we're gonna set it to 165 for 6 hours total, but we're gonna come back in about 3 hours and check on the beef. And we're gonna dab away any of the excess fat that comes to the surface. So we're back, it's been about 3.5 hours, and we're gonna take a peek. Coming along pretty nicely. You can see that the fat has kind of turned into liquid in some spots, like here. It makes it much easier to sop up the fat and remove even more of the fat that's inside of the meat. So we're just gonna go through, do this to all the different pieces, and continue dehydrating for another 3 hours, potentially more, because I cut these pretty thick. All right, right, so our beef has finished dehydrating. It took about 7 hours all in all. This is cut a little bit thicker than I did in the past. Try to aim for about 1/6 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch. But if you like it on the thicker side, it's just gonna take a little bit longer. Allow it to cool for at least an hour. You want it to come to room temperature before you run your first test. And the first test is going to be the bending test. You just wanna take a piece of the jerky, bend it slightly and see if it cracks in half. You want to see this type of cracking right here. You don't want it to just snap in half, but you also don't want it to just bend like it's raw beef. If it's still too pliable, give it another hour in the dehydrator and you want it to come to this point right here. So once you think your beef is done dehydrating, it's time to move on to storage. We want to use some sort of airtight container. You can use a freezer baggie, but ideally you use something like this, a ball jar with a sealable lid. And we're just gonna put all the beef into this jar. Okay, we have a full jar of beef jerky. I'm leaving one out for me to taste test. And the last thing I'm gonna put in here is a desiccant packet. And then you can buy these on Amazon. It's basically just the silica gel packets that you find in foods that you buy at the store. Make sure you get food safe silica gel packets. They're pretty affordable. I'll leave a link in the description below. But I'm just gonna put one of these packets in with our beef jerky, and this just absorbs oxygen. Again, that's one of the things that's gonna make your beef jerky spoil faster. And there you have it. Why don't we try some, huh? So good. The sweetness hits right off the bat. Nice and tender, cut against the grain. Just a touch of spiciness. You could add a lot more cayenne pepper if you want, but very good. I hope you make this, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. So how long will beef jerky last? It's gonna vary based on how long you dehydrate. The longer you dehydrate, typically the longer it's gonna last. If you don't open it, it should last 1 to 2 months. But once you open it, you should consume it within about a week. Hey, thanks for watching PepperGeek. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, leave a like, subscribe to our channel for more like this. And hey, if you actually made this beef jerky, come back to this video or on our website, peppergeek.com, and leave a comment telling us what you thought. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. And hey, don't forget to go over to peppergeek.com and enter our monthly hot sauce giveaway. We give away a free hot sauce every single month. You can enter every single month. All you have to do is sign up for our weekly email newsletter and you're signed up. So thanks for watching. I hope you're doing well, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.